This video is brought to you by Polyamory. Stick around at the end to find out more. I said it, so you have to now. The games industry seems to be, as ever, in a nostalgic mood, going by all the remakes and remasters that have shown up lately. Gothic, Star Fox, Ascree Black Flag, Halo, to name but several. And I've been thinking about a particularly nostalgic topic. Gaming nerds have always argued over which of two things is best. Is Mario better than Sonic? Is Xbox better than PlayStation? Which of Lara Croft's two boobies could one most comfortably rest one's head upon? But there was one classic argument that was a big one for me and a lot of us 90s PC gaming kids, the big debate of 1996. Which game was better, Duke Nukem 3D or Quake 1? And I suppose it lingers in my mind because, like with all of the most compelling debates in life, like the Lara Croft tit thing, I still have no idea on which side I fall. Let's put this in context. This was a period when the first-person shooter was first flowering as a genre. Wolfenstein 3D had popped the cap on, well, popping caps in shrieking Nazis, and Doom had elaborated on that by adding floors and ceilings that could change height from room to room. Slow the fuck down, boys! And by replacing the Nazis with demons from hell, the only faction of villain that can be slaughtered en masse with even fewer moral qualms. Doom was a landmark title on many fronts, but it still left plenty of room for improvement. Digressing for a moment, you could say Doom's significance came down to its engine or its gameplay or its groundbreaking multiplayer, but for me, Doom's biggest contribution to the evolution of shooters was the fact that it had a shotgun that really kicked ass. No, really, before Doom it was all pistols and various flavors of machine gun. It was Doom that finally figured out how satisfying it is to get right in someone's grill and blow their head off with a blast that sounds like the gates of hell slamming shut on Satan's dick, punctuated by the little action of pumping to eject the shell with the casual air of a dog lifting their leg to do a little wee on a defeated foe. And that's why every shooter from Doom onwards had to have a shotgun. Duke Nukem 3D and Quake were both released in 1996 and were both successors to Doom in different ways. Quake was the firstborn heir, the one by the same developers with an all-new engine created by Big Daddy Carmack. But Duke Nukem was the childhood friend and rival of the firstborn heir, who was the most dedicated student in Carmack's dojo. So might as well start the point-by-point comparison where Doom left off. Which game has the better shotgun? Duke's shotgun is more or less exactly like the Doom shotgun. It's got the exact same boom-cha-chick action, complete with the questionably necessary turning of the gun vertical to pump it, as if your character is looking at it and going, yep, still a shotgun, just checking. Some might say Duke's shotgun is an improvement on Doom's. The pump has a convenient vertical handle, it's decked out in stylish black, and there's a little Duke Nukem logo on the side just for flourish. Not sure why that's also true of all the ones dropped by the enemies. Maybe Duke's been licensing his brand out. Quake's shotgun, I'm sorry to say, isn't in the same league. It gets some points for being the default weapon rather than a pistol, but it's a dull grey piece of plumbing puffing out blasts of shot with a disappointed sigh, like a fairy knocking excess glitter dust off the end of her wand. Doesn't even have a sweet pumping animation, and the super shotgun doesn't do much better either. It's slower and slightly bassier and resembles a pair of embarrassing metallic udders. So that's 1 point for Duke right off the bat. Let's see if Quake can rally from this when we consider the next tiny, whiny, barely significant point, that Quake happens to be one of the most important landmarks in the history of graphics technology. One of the earliest FPSs to use fully textured polygonal 3D. In contrast to Duke Nukem 3D having to make do with the old technological dead end, that was fake 3D, the same as Doom, where you can't look up or down properly and you can't have rooms on top of other rooms. Well, you can, but only if you basically perform sleight of hand magic tricks and use hidden silent teleports to let the player think they're in a room over a room, but are actually teleporting to a different part of the map. Quake didn't have to do that. All Quake had to do was, put a room on top of another room. Polygonal 3D just looked so much better and was so much easier to work with. You can look all the way up and down, you can have dynamic lighting, you can make a model for a monster, animate it, and you're done. You don't have to make 8 more animations for every angle one might look at the monster from, like you had to do with billboard sprites. Plus, it was the shape of things to come. Polygonal 3D has been the standard ever since. There are engines to this day that still contain scraps of the Quake engine. But while Quake obviously wins the tech event, was it really making the most of that tech? Design and story-wise, it was taking all its cues from Doom. You're a lone soldier who has to go to the evil monster dimension and save humanity from invasion by clearing out a whole bunch of illogical monster mazes. Lots of castles and dungeons and tunnels that don't seem to be laid out with any function in mind, besides challenging an invading one-man army. Meanwhile, in Duke Nukem 3D, the levels are modelled after actual places that could exist in the real world. The first level is recognisably a street in Hollywood, with stars in the pavement and billboards referencing the O.J. Simpson trial. You go into a cinema, and it looks like a cinema. There's seats, toilets, a concession stand, a projector you can turn on to reveal a looping gif of a lady dancing around in her pants. Quake might have had polygons, but it could just about manage doors and elevators. Duke was fake 3D, but it had doors, elevators, underwater swimming, breakable glass, rotating doors, working trains, TVs that broke when you shot them, toilets you could go wee-wees in, working mirrors you could press the use key on to make Duke say, "Damn, I'm looking good." And that gets us to the other thing, personality. Duke 3D had gobs of it. It was inescapable. The way Duke was constantly spouting Army of Darkness quotes from behind the first-person camera. Admittedly, he comes across as a massive bellend, but that's still something to latch onto. All Quake can offer is an angry face in the middle of the status bar that gets bloodier as you lose health, and the very disquieting screams the main character makes when you fall into corrosive liquid. Normally, at the end of a video like this, I'd throw the debate out to the comments, who I'm sure will have many compelling arguments for both sides, but the fact is, in isolation, debating whether Quake or Duke 3D is the better game is pretty pointless now. Obviously, the correct answer is that a game that comes along with both Quake's shiny new tech and Duke's excellent sense of setting, say with a name like Half-Life, would immediately be superior to both. What makes the question interesting is that it's not just about the two games, it's a duel between two philosophies that has played out through time immemorial. Quake represents the argument for always pushing forward into new territory and new discoveries, even if the first results are duller and less effective. Duke, meanwhile, represents the case that making the best with what we've already got might be smarter in the short term. You could frame the debate as style over substance, although honestly I'm not sure which is which. I suppose Quake feels more substantive, in that it's one of the first major FPSs to have a consistent emotional tone. The gloomy visuals and creepy industrial soundscape do a good job of solidifying its constant dismal atmosphere. Duke, on the other hand, can be lurchingly tone-deaf, especially when Duke pauses between movie quotes and making veiled references to his willy to interact with the captured women in slimy green cocoons who can only beg for death in raspy voices. Yeah, maybe that's another event in which Quake wins the point. It's not as rampantly misogynistic. It doesn't treat women as inanimate props to occasionally be handed $20 for a 2-frame booby jiggle. Kinda hard to do that when there are no female characters in the game at all. Well, there's one. The final boss, Shub-Niggurath, is referred to by female pronouns, but that's hardly misogynistic, just because she's an inanimate lump of flesh with 3 bloody vaginas for a face that we kill by literally penetrating her insides and then forcibly birthing ourselves. Actually, now that I'm writing this down, let's call it a draw.
This video is brought to you by Poly Armory High Caliber Love, the world's only fully loaded conspiracy theorist gun nut dating simulation. Free to play right now on Steam.
These woke liberal elites are coming right now to take your guns. Do you love your guns? I mean, do you really love your guns?
Don't be scared. I can take it. Oh God, I can take it.